When Marc Marquez made the move to Ducati for the 2024 season, a lot of people had doubts. They wondered if age, past injuries, and the challenge of adjusting to a new bike would hold him back. After years of struggling at Honda, could the six-time MotoGP champ really find his form again? Could he handle the GP25 better than Ducati's star rider Francesco Bagnaia? And maybe the biggest question, was it even possible for him to rewrite his legacy? Now, 11 rounds into the 2025 MotoGP season, those questions aren't just answered, they've been completely shut down. The German Grand Prix at the Sachsenring, a track where Marquez has always excelled, was expected to be close. But what actually happened was a clear and powerful reminder of what he's capable of. At 32 years old, now in Ducati Red, Marquez didn't just come back, he may be better than he's ever been. His weekend in Germany was nearly perfect. He was fastest in qualifying, won the sprint race in the rain despite a mistake in turn 1, and then led every single lap of Sunday's 30-lap Grand Prix. He finished with a 6.380 second lead over his brother Alex Marquez and more than 25 seconds ahead of riders like Jack Miller. But what really caught everyone off guard came after the race. Marquez said, "I was not on my limit." He talked about how he focused on controlling the race and preserving his tyres on the slick track. "I just tried to manage the tyres from the beginning because I knew the race was super long. It's true that in the end the tyres dropped more than I expected, but even like this I felt comfortable." His fastest lap during the race was a 1 minute 20.704 seconds, almost a full second slower than his best time in qualifying. He never went all out, instead he stayed smooth and precise, hitting every line just right. "I was in a perfect line in the correct way in every corner because I was not on my limit. My limit was 1 minute 20.4 seconds, 1 minute 20.3 seconds, as I showed in practice." And his dominance wasn't just limited to the Grand Prix. In the sprint race, he bounced back from an early mistake, climbing from 5th place to snatch the win on the final lap. That result also marked his 4th straight weekend, scoring the maximum 37 points, something he'd never done before. Let's take a second to really appreciate the scale of what Marc Marquez is pulling off in 2025. After 11 rounds, he's sitting at the top of the standings with an incredible 344 points. That's an average of 31.3 points per round. For a bit of context, Jorge Martin averaged 25.4 points per round in 2024, and Pecco Bagnaia had 24.35 in 2023. Even during Marquez's iconic 2019 season, he averaged 29.4 points. So right now, at 31.3, he's on track for what could easily be the most dominant season of his career. He's already bagged 7 Grand Prix wins and has taken 10 out of 11 sprint races, both records under the current format. He's just 4 GP victories away from matching Pecco's total from last year. Back in 2019, Marquez racked up a record 420 points. If he keeps this pace, he's projected to end the 2025 season with close to 700 points, nearly 300 more than the current all-time record. That's not just impressive, it's mind-blowing. To show just how strong his grip on the championship is, Marc is 83 points ahead of his brother Alex, who's in 2nd place, and 147 clear of teammate Pecco. He could skip the next 2 rounds entirely and still be leading the standings. What makes this level of domination even more impressive is how fast he got used to the Ducati GP25. After a decade riding Honda's RC213V, switching to the Ducati meant learning a completely different machine. The GP25 has more power, different electronics, and it behaves differently in braking and acceleration. But Marquez adjusted fast. He refined his style, becoming smoother and more accurate without depending so much on physical strength. "I changed my riding style to be a bit smooth and less physical," he said after the race. "The way to ride the Ducati is a big difference compared to the Honda, but also the fact I had the injury in my arm, and all these things I had to adapt." It's not just about how fast he goes, it's how smart he races. In Germany, he skipped a soft tyre time attack on Friday so he could focus on getting the electronics dialed in and running race simulations on the medium rear. I prefer to prepare for the race, he said. I was riding with that medium rear tyre to prepare, especially the electronics of the maps, because they are crucial at this racetrack.
That strategy paid off big time. While riders like Fabio Di Giannantonio and Marco Bezzecchi were lighting up the timing charts early on, Marquez just kept building up pace. By lap 6 of Sunday's race, he had already pulled out a gap of over a second, and when Di Giannantonio went down, Marquez was more than 3 seconds ahead and still wasn't pushing flat out. If there's one big side story to Marquez's 2025 domination, it's the slow collapse of Pecco Bagnaия's chances of taking back the MotoGP title. On paper, his weekend at the Sachsenring looked decent. He ended up on the podium, but in reality, it was all about damage control. He started 11th in qualifying, finished 12th in the sprint, and only landed 3rd on Sunday because several riders ahead of him crashed out. Now he's 147 points behind Marquez, and the road back isn't looking promising. Pecco hasn't beaten Marquez in a straight-up dry race all season. The only times he's finished ahead were in Austin and Jerez, and that was only because Marquez crashed in both. People inside the team say Pecco is a couple of steps behind. Gavin Emmett, reporting from inside Pecco's garage, said he's definitely looking more settled than at the beginning of the year, but still, he just can't match Marquez. And even if he gets back to his best, he's still got to deal with trying to beat Marc on this version of the Ducati. Now there's even talk that Pecco might think about leaving Ducati, possibly heading to Yamaha to get out from under Marquez's shadow. It would be a bold move, but not unprecedented. Other former teammates of Marquez have had to make similar decisions in the past.
There's also a psychological side to what Marquez is doing this year. As Matt Oxley put it, he's fighting a different kind of battle in 2025, not with fear of crashing, but with the temptation to push harder than he needs to. It's about knowing when to hold back. Oxley wrote, "He's kind of fighting his demons, isn't he?" And that feels spot on. At Sachsenring, he went against Ducati boss Gigi Dall'Igna's warning to be careful at turn 11. Marquez didn't ease off, he went full attack, took pole, won both races, and once again showed that he trusts his gut more than anything else. Even Ducati team manager David Tardozzi admitted that Marquez's biggest weakness is wanting more all the time. He puts in an extreme amount of work with his engineer, but that's also what makes him so intimidating. So here's the big question. Is this Marquez's best MotoGP season ever? If he stays fit, the numbers will say yes. But beyond the stats, there's more to the story. Back in 2019, Marquez was at the peak of his physical powers. He was riding a bike built around his style, fully fit, and completely dominant. Fast forward to 2025, he's now 32, has gone through 4 surgeries and had to relearn everything on a totally different machine. On top of that, he's doing it in the toughest version of MotoGP yet, the sprint era. It's a format that's harsher on tyres, physically demanding, and mentally draining. And still, Marquez is controlling the championship like never before. He summed it up perfectly. To achieve my 200th GP with a victory means still we are at a very good level. So I will try to keep going and especially keep with the same passion. This will be the key point. Now look at how that stacks up against the sport's legends. Rossi won his last title at 30. Lorenzo was done by 32. Stoner walked away at 27. Meanwhile, Marquez at 32 is closing in on matching Rossi's 7 Premier Class titles. And he's doing it in an era that has more races, more pressure, and a lot less room for mistakes. If Marquez goes on to win the 2025 title, which is looking more likely by the day, he'll hit a list of milestones that cements his legacy as one of the all-time greats. He'd join Rossi with 7 top-class championships, tying a number many thought would never be reached again. And he'd do it as the oldest MotoGP world champion of the modern era, surpassing both Rossi and Lorenzo in age when they last stood at the top. Marquez is also on pace to break the record for most sprint race wins in a single season.
He's already passed Jorge Martin's previous record of 9, with 10 sprint victories out of just 11 rounds. He now sits second on the all-time Premier Class wins list with 69, trailing only Valentino Rossi. And while Rossi's career total of 6,357 points might still take a few more seasons to reach, Marquez has already racked up 4,480, and at this rate, even that milestone seems possible. As the second half of the season kicks off this weekend in Brno, the expectation is that Marquez will only stretch his lead further, barring any major setbacks. But more than just the numbers, what's becoming more apparent is the psychological shift. Marquez isn't just back, he's evolving. Week by week, he and Ducati are sharpening their race execution, managing tyres better, controlling pace more effectively, and mastering every aspect of the race weekend. As Matt Oxley pointed out, 2026 could be even scarier. With a full season of Ducati experience under his belt, Marquez could unlock another level. That thought alone has to unsettle the rest of the paddock. And if Ducati manages to carry this momentum into the 2026 rule changes, this might just be the beginning of a new era, one dominated by Marquez in red. Team manager Davide Tardozzi summed it up best. "I hope Marc stays at Ducati until the end of his career." Right now, Marquez is pushing the limits of what's considered possible on a bike that supposedly wasn't designed for him, and doing it at an age when most MotoGP champions start to fade. With rivals falling behind, what Marquez is doing in 2025 is more than just a return to form. It's a statement. From smart tyre strategies to staying in control during unpredictable races, from sprint race comebacks to Sunday domination without even needing to go flat out, every race adds to what's shaping up to be one of the greatest seasons MotoGP has ever seen. He's not just chasing another title, he's chasing legacy. And 2025 might be the year he locks it in for good. Francesco Bagnaya's weekend started with real hope and ended with a hard dose of reality about how his 2025 MotoGP season is going. After finally securing his first pole position of the year at Brno, Pecco looked like he might be on the verge of a breakthrough. The two-time world champion had spent the entire season trying to get the unpredictable Ducati GP25 under control, and that Saturday lap gave fans a glimpse of the Pecco they remembered, confident, composed and fast. But as the weekend unfolded, so did any belief that he's still in the title hunt. Pecco didn't just miss the podium in both the sprint and the main race, he walked away from Brno with more than just lost points. What he carried home was a heavy dose of reality. For the first time, he openly admitted it. "We must be realists," he said, after coming in fourth on Sunday. "It's hard to think about fighting with Marc in these conditions." That wasn't just Pecco being humble. It was a clear, public acknowledgement that his championship hopes for 2025 are fading fast. And the issues he's been battling since round one, he's starting to believe they might not be fixable at all. To really grasp how big that statement was, you have to go back to Saturday. Nobody expected him to take pole, not even him, but with a flawless lap and the yellow flag freezing the timesheets, Pecco shopped the grid and beat out Marc Marquez for his first pole of the season. It looked like a possible turning point. Instead, it quickly turned into more of the same frustrations. During the sprint race, a software glitch gave Pecco a false warning about low front tyre pressure. Worried about getting penalised, he eased off the pace, only to learn later that the alert wasn't real. That hesitation dropped him down to 7th. Then, in the main race, after grabbing the whole shot into turn 1, he was overtaken within 3 laps by Marco Bezzecchi, Marc Marquez and Pedro Acosta. From that point on, Pecco kept pushing. He even closed the gap to Acosta late in the race, but the charge came too late. He ended up 4th off the podium again. It wasn't just a rough outing. It pointed to something deeper. In the first part of the race, I was struggling quite a lot with my feeling on braking on entry, Pecco told MotoGP.com, but then he realised that dialing back the traction control actually helped a bit, so he started reducing it, one step, then another,
and by the end of the race, he was finally feeling more competitive. That kind of adjustment, made mid-race, showed guts. Manually tweaking the electronics to make up for mechanical issues isn't something you see often, and when a rider like Pecco starts turning off the safety systems just to get comfortable, it really says something. Pecco's frustration isn't new, but it's definitely getting louder. He's been open for months about how the GP25 has made him lose confidence under braking. And Brno, where strong downhill braking is key, just highlighted the issue again. This time, he didn't hold back. I've always been strongest on the brakes, very hard to overtake me there. When someone tried, they'd usually go wide, he said. Now I'm the worst. Everyone passes me. That's a shocking turn for a rider who built his success and 2 championships on late braking and confident trail entries. What used to be his strength is now his weak spot. Technically, the Ducati GP25 still has the braking performance, but for Pecco, the feel just isn't there. The rear of the bike isn't rotating the way he needs it to, and the confidence to slide it in on corner entry has disappeared. After testing the larger 355mm brake discs back in Aragon, Pecco has gone back to using the smaller ones, but this time with a new brake pump to mimic the larger disc feel. While it's helped with the lever response a bit, the core issues are still there. It's still very tough, he said. There's a lot of movement, a lot of locking, and it's hard to brake the way I want to. Last season, he was known for braking late and aggressively. This year, everything has to be controlled and straight. The rear end isn't doing its part to help slow the bike down. Worse yet, he's starting to lose hope that Ducati can solve the problem. I don't think we will improve it, Pecco admitted. Maybe in the test at the end of the year we'll understand a bit more, but for now we won't improve. Maybe we can just adapt. That's not just a technical problem, it's mental too. The more Pecco doubts the bike, the more he questions if he can even win with it. And to make things harder, his teammate is making it all look easy. Marc Marquez just walked away from Brno with his 5th consecutive Grand Prix and sprint double. He's now leading the championship by a massive 120 points over his brother Alex and by 168 over Pecco. And this dominance isn't coming from a superior machine. Ducati Corsa general manager Gigi Dall'Igna admitted after the race that their early advantage this season has faded. The others have really raised their heads, Gigi said. It feels like a moment to get back to work, not think about vacation. He pointed out that teams like KTM and Aprilia have made huge progress, partly thanks to development concessions that Ducati no longer has. He also acknowledged Ducati took a conservative approach to upgrades in 2025, which was somewhat expected as the grid began to balance out mid-season. But even with all that in play, one Ducati rider is still getting results: Marc Marquez. Only Marc was able to make a difference with our bike, Pecco admitted. I don't know why it was so difficult to ride the GP25 here, and only he managed to stand out, especially in the left-hand corners. I tried to make the difference in the right ones, but I couldn't. That's a tough pill to swallow for any factory rider, especially one who's supposed to be leading the team. Right now, Pecco's not just trailing Marc in the standings, he's behind him in confidence, in adaptability and in outright speed. Even with the points gap and all the technical headaches, Gigi Dall'Igna still stood by Pecco. He was unlucky because of us, Gigi said, referring to the false tyre pressure alert that hit during the sprint. A great sprint yesterday and a great race today. This was probably his best weekend so far. It might sound generous given the final result, but there's some truth in that take. Pecco was the only Ducati rider besides Marc to even crack the top 10 in the main race. He set the 3rd fastest lap of the Grand Prix and kept fighting all the way to the end. According to Gigi, he only had 3 or 4 laps in the first part of the race where the pace dropped, but then he brought it back. That's a clear sign he's improving. It's a bit of a mixed message. There's the encouragement about Pecco's progress, but also a clear signal that Ducati as a whole needs to step it up. So far, it's been a very positive season, but the advantage we had has slowly faded, Gigi admitted. Now's the time to start finding better answers than what we've got.
He also cleared up the confusion around the sprint issue, explaining it was a software initialization problem that triggered a dashboard error. Basically, a malfunction in an anti-panic system. It was a one-off, but it added another frustrating chapter to Pecco's season.
And the guy who kept him off the podium at Brno, Pedro Acosta. The rookie's rise has been steady all season, but Brno felt like a turning point. He finished second in the sprint, third in the Grand Prix, and made it clear he's no longer just a promising talent. He's a threat. Even Acosta acknowledged how close Pecco came in the final laps. I was giving it 100%. When I saw Pecco closing in at 0.6 seconds, I started pushing again and gave everything I had, he said. If I couldn't hold him off, I wanted to be sure I gave it my all. That was a key moment. Pecco was finally going on the attack, but Acosta dug deep and held firm, something Pecco might have done himself just a year ago. Pedro Acosta is now up to 7th in the championship standings, sitting just behind the VR46 duo, and he's quietly turning into a serious contender for the top 5. While his KTM still struggles when riding in dirty air behind other bikes, his raw pace and smart decision-making late in races continue to stand out. On the other hand, Pecco is starting to look over his shoulder in the rankings. His new benchmark isn't Marc Marquez anymore, it's Alex Marquez. We need to reset and focus on doing our best with Alex as the reference point, Pecco said after Brno. Clearly, our approach to the season has changed after so many races. That's just how it is now. He's no longer chasing the title, he's trying to stay in the fight for second. At the halfway mark of the 2025 season, Pecco Bagnaia is 3rd in the standings. He's got 1 win, 1 pole position and a stretch of solid but unremarkable results. But those numbers don't really capture what's happening. This is a rider and a champion caught in a full-blown crisis, technically, mentally and competitively. If I had to rate my season so far, I'd give it a 6 out of 10, he said. And if I include last year, maybe a 5. Now compare that to Marc Marquez, who's averaging 31.75 points per round. Pecco, just 17.75. The gap is massive. And with Austria up next, a track where Pecco's historically performed well, you'd expect confidence. But even he sounds uncertain. Austria's the next race and I've usually been able to make a difference there, he said. We'll see what happens. But it's not just Austria that's in question, it's the entire second half of 2025 and maybe more. Can Ducati adjust the GP25 to suit Pecco again? Can he regain that braking magic that once made him nearly impossible to pass? Or has the character of this bike simply drifted too far from what he needs? Right now, Pecco Bagnaia has never looked more vulnerable, and with Marc Marquez looking more unstoppable by the race, that's a scary reality for anyone still holding on to hopes of a title challenge.